Hello, my name is Holly Chapman. I'll be giving a short presentation on my mini project for Data Fundamentals 1. I chose to do a trend analysis on a set of antibodies I test in a clinical lab here at WashU. I work in the neuromuscular group in the Department of Neurology. Our lab provides clinical testing for a range of neuromuscular disorders. We receive samples from WashU patients and externally from anywhere in the world. The testing I perform is part of the demyelination panel. The test looks for markers of demyelinating diseases. These are diseases where the protective layer that surrounds your nerves is damaged. One set of markers that I test that show the most positive results are anti-neurofascin antibodies. There are 3 anti-neurofascin antibodies I test for in patient sera: Neurofascin 140, Neurofascin 155, and Neurofascin 186. My trend analysis looks at these 3 antibody types. The data collected was sourced from the neuromuscular group. The original data sets I used were the weekly test reports I submitted. It's a list consisting of rows of patient names and patient numbers with corresponding columns where I enter results for each antibody. For this project, I analyzed 1 year's worth of Western blot data. Western blots are a qualitative immunoassay. Bands are detected, and they can range from very dark to barely noticeable. We use ratings on a scale of plus, or plus minus for how dark a band is. We sometimes use minus plus for a barely noticeable band. To simplify my ratings, I cleaned up the data by categorizing all results that had been rated as plus, or plus minus as just positive, and any band that had been rated negative plus, I categorized as negative with the other negatives. To the right, I've included an image of Western blots at the end of testing. There were 19 patients tested. Also at the bottom, there are the letters G and M representing IgG antibodies and IgM antibodies tested in patient sera. For this project, I only collected data for IgG antibodies. I picked patient 9 to show you how I rate. You can see 2 darker bands and a lighter band above them. The 2 darker bands show that the patient had IgG antibodies for Neurofascin 140 and Neurofascin 155. The highest, fainter band showed that the patient also had IgG antibodies for Neurofascin 186. I would rate as plus minus because it was fainter. As part of cleaning my data set, I removed patient names and numbers. The variables in the data set included a unique identifying number, test week number, number of samples tested per week, and the absolute and relative frequencies. For absolute frequencies, I recorded the number of positives for each antibody type, and I divide the number of positives for each type by the total tested that week for the relative frequencies. For example, if there were a total of 50 patients tested and 10 tested positive for Neurofascin 140, this would give a relative frequency of 0.2. As I mentioned before, I collected and analyzed data for 1 year. The dates for this collection is from 9/18/2023 through 9/9/2024. This chart shows the relative frequencies of each of the Neurofascin IgG antibodies tested for each test week. This past year, there were 51 test weeks. I do not have a week 52 because in December, there was 1 week of no testing. I used test weeks instead of dates to not have a gap in my line chart. What I found interesting is that the frequency of positives dropped dramatically around week 10. This is the week before Thanksgiving. And they pick up dramatically around week 18, which is the middle of January. Also, I can see that all 3 antibody types tend to trend up or down in relative frequency together. This slide is a deeper dive into the statistics and the relative frequency of each antibody type. What I see are a lot of similarities. The slide shows a minimum frequency of 0 for all 3. In fact, there was a week where there were no positives. The maximum frequency is around 30% positive. I did not find any outliers, and the mean value is close for all 3. In conclusion, what I learned is that the 3 antibody types I test show similar relative frequency in different statistical categories. I plan to continue with trending analysis, adding in data each week for the upcoming year, and I plan to watch for matching patterns. Do I see a relative frequency starting to decrease in the fall again? Do positive results reach lowest number just before Thanksgiving again? And will the positive numbers increase again in mid to late January? Also in the future, I may investigate an exploratory phase with the data. This includes asking questions like, is it possible the trend relates to sample degradation? We do not have control over the length of time between when the sample is taken from the patient and how long it takes to reach us. The longer the samples sit, the more they tend to degrade. We don't know how many false negatives in our data set. I'm curious what will be seen with future data. This concludes my presentation on neurofascin trend analysis. Thank you for your time.